Hello and welcome to the SmackDown Preview Podcast. I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dadley Boyz from WhatCulture, Michael Hamlet and Michael Sidgwick, to look ahead to tonight's episode of SmackDown on Fox. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts where we review Raw, SmackDown, the Wednesday Night War between AEW and NXT, pay-per-views, we have interviews, roundtable discussions, and a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on WrestleCulture. But as I said, joined by Michael Hamlet and Michael Sidgwick to look ahead to SmackDown tonight. A horrendous rating last week, and tonight we genuinely don't know who's going to be on the show post-Crown Jewel. So I want to ask you, will tonight's SmackDown be a disaster? And if so, how do they save it?
I don't know. Right, just to be clear, at time of recording, there's been no concrete update on whether a huge pocket of the WWE SmackDown roster has even made it out of Saudi Arabia. The last thing I've read on Twitter is that they've all been sent to hotels. They're not on the plane anymore. So a few eventualities are in play here. One, it was reported by, I believe, Ryan Satin, that there was just simply a problem with the plane. It feels deeper than that from the other hints I've got. Dave Meltzer said it's not a problem with the plane, nor is it inclement weather conditions. Sean Ross Sapp has heard, presumably off the record, or something that you can't have a concrete knowledge of, that Vince McMahon has had some kind of disagreement and promptly just flown over by himself on a private jet. PW Insider claims there was a problem with the fuel, but, quote, other things were going on. So, long story short, no one knows what the hell is happening, but there has to be a kind of a serious issue going on here, because if it was simply a problem with the plane, the vast wealth at Saudi Arabia's disposal means they could have simply built a plane in the same time frame and flown everybody on it. It's clearly not a problem simply with the plane.
It's almost like there's no babyface billionaires and some like nice people can't just spend their money to help some people out. It's wild. I mean, it's just another... Maybe they've all just got a big hangover because this Riyadh season is as good as everybody talks about on those nice video packages.
I don't think they're happy. I do not think they're happy. Buddy Murphy's also tweeted, never again.
Never again.
Andrade has tweeted something to that effect as well.
Wrestlers being trapped in hotels with their phones and Wi-Fi apparently is going to be the source of all the comedy in the run-up to SmackDown.
We're being flippant here. This could bite us on the arse. Seriously, this could bite us on the arse. By the time this podcast comes out, there could be something significant that's happened, and we've got absolutely no idea but to speculate, and we're in a position where, do we joke about it? I don't know.
The wrinkle here as well is that, there is 12, Meltzer reports 12 wrestlers are on their way. We don't know who those 12 are, and we can make assumptions based on placements on the card. But even then, this is quite funny. The comedy idea of Vince McMahon just darting off by himself almost suggests as if you could believe it was just the first 12 on the plane because he's already got nothing to do with it. Could well be Michael Cole because they need his production skills. It's like we can make assumptions of the Romans and the Braves, but based on absolutely nothing or baseless.
And why are they allowed to leave?
Yeah, exactly.
And the other ones, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
The thing is, aside from speculating on that, even if none of the people who wrestled at Crown Jewel could make it, it's not like they have nothing to put on for SmackDown. They still have a huge female roster, obviously, to utilise. Some pretty good wrestlers who haven't flown out there, in the likes of Daniel Bryan and Sami Zayn. So how do they save SmackDown tonight if that is the case?
If it has to go down that route, I mean, like, I wasn't being flippant this morning. I suggested online that you just have a predominantly women's show. Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan, fortuitously, started an angle last week. So them having a match actually feeds into Bryan rejecting Zayn's attempt to try and bring him over at the dark side last week. So that's there at their disposal, not the fact they're both brilliant wrestlers and could do this anyway if they needed to. I like, karmically, as long as the wrestlers are fine, that this has happened to WWE, because we were all advocates of this being Evolution 2. This was an open goal, and they didn't take that, and that's on them. So if nothing else, if they're forced to book it, then great, because it should have been that show all along.
They should have booked Evolution 2 all along for several reasons, not least of which PR. They got away with it last time. I mean, they didn't really, because everyone thought they were complete dicks for doing Crown Jewel in the first place. But Evolution was a lovely compromise. It was my favourite main roster pay-per-view of the year. And I think that was almost consensus, or there or thereabouts.
Oh, it was a banger of a show, though.
Their concerns ahead of promoting it this year was that they didn't have Ronda Rousey, who they felt they needed to drive that show as a pay-per-view unto itself. They didn't have that problem with SmackDown. If anything, they could have guaranteed a crowd, because they always get one for a TV taping somehow, even though many of them are rubbish. and they could have just had Evolution 2.
What are they worried about? The ratings. It's not like every major star last week got them a number, was it, on FS1? Like, it's not like normally when they say, oh, well, like the women just don't draw, we can't put them in main event segments, blah, blah, blah. Well, of all the weeks where you've got a low bar to rise up from, it was this one.
If they had have built a pay-per-view on TV,
Yeah.
like that's a really good USP that they should have done all along. They could have had their cake and eaten it too, and they didn't do any of this.
So what we are left with, obviously, is if we're talking about like the sort of the scorched earth situation where you have just got virtually a whole women's roster, SmackDown will probably be great. Even if you've got limited wrestlers, WWE has this weird way of producing like lemonade from lemons at this point, like when guys get injured or when there's, for whatever reason, far less weirder than what we find ourselves in today. These shows tend to deliver because WWE's bloat and over-delivery of content means that these are like the breath of fresh air weeks. We talk about these fondly. People still remember the Ash Cloud week when half the roster was trapped in Iceland or from a European tour, couldn't fly through Iceland. And what you had was like this random roster of guys that were just pulled onto television that wouldn't normally get a chance and just having a nice time without, again, Vince McMahon's oppressive hand. Maybe he'll be one of the only ones there tonight. If anything, like, I dread to say this, it could start with a Vince McMahon promo because at least he's going to have landed.
And the idiots will cheer him.
Yeah.
But you know what they say, you live by the bone saw, you die by the bone saw.
Let's
But
move.
we are taking this situation seriously.
I'm going to go on Twitter because honestly, this is fascinating for me. Like, it really is.
Let's assume they've prioritised the stars that have left Saudi Arabia. So one would assume the new Universal Champion would be a part of that. Bray Wyatt is scheduled to appear on Miz TV. How do you see this one going? Before we even discuss the whole world title picture.
This felt bigger before Bray had won the belt because...
No updates, by the way.
No updates. Like, the situation now is that obviously Bray is the Universal Champion. It's an aggressive rehabilitation between now and probably WrestleMania. So, like, this now seems to me to just be like, you bring in Bray Wyatt, not The Fiend, Bray Wyatt they've advertised. You bring in Bray Wyatt out of the Firefly Funhouse and into a live crowd for the very first time. They'll probably want to use some WWE magic to have him turn into The Fiend in front of a live crowd.
Was he on the plane?
Well, as
This is
well,
what we're saying, is suggesting if that is the case, that they've
working on the
prioritised
assumption
that.
that the advertised guys are back, yeah. Like, the Fiend outfit is under the ring, lights go out, lights come back on, Bray Wyatt's disappeared, the Fiend's there, mandible claw, something like that. It sounds really simplistic, but this was more intriguing before he was the champion. He's the champion now. They just can't make missteps. They can't lose weeks on doing daft stuff with him when they've had their extra lives with that. Time to put the mandible claw on guys like The Miz and just be done with it.
Someone pointed out that it's not Bray Wyatt who's the Universal Champion, it's The Fiend. So if they have Bray Wyatt come out, he can't lay claim to the title.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting how they manage
like
this.
I say, he kind of has to become the Fiend almost to see that for the first time.
Yes, it's absolutely bizarre. I've got no idea how they're going to approach this. I do find it to be the strangest hook, the fact that they've got the two top champions on one show. I've got no faith in them whatsoever, juggling this situation to like a really sort of satisfying, dramatic outcome, but I'm very perversely intrigued by all this.
How would you fix the world title situation then between Universal Championship, WWE Championship, and the fact that Raw has neither of them?
Oh, just pretty loaded that on me, haven't you? I don't know, Jeff. I don't really know.
Because it's one of those, there's people have been speculating about perhaps that you transfer the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, the Universal Champion effectively, over to Raw because they do have this extra draft pick
Imagine that, man.
due to the Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross shenanigans.
They made express mention on Crown Jewel that the Fiend is taking that title to SmackDown. Would it be very them to just say, actually, no, it's just going to Raw instead? It's not something you can put past them at this stage. And for me, that's far more probable than a real intricate title switch that manages to get the loser and the winner over.
Brock Lesnar, at this point, as much as I love him, and I do love him, and I love the way that he's used again, you know, he's not a ratings draw anymore. That has been confirmed. He's no longer the hook that he used to be.
Yep.
It's not like when they bring back 20 guys, Brock used to have that impact, and he's not that anymore. What they do have on their hands is Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio, and Rey Mysterio is a Raw superstar. Could they not be leading to a title match between those two? Because that was the takeaway from the Cain Velasquez match. It wasn't Cain related. Could Rey, slaying the beast to win that title and bring it to Raw, allow Brock to either roam free across both brands again, because he isn't Fox's golden boy because he just isn't that guy. But if Fox want him exclusively for Smack, he's not come back and been the permanent guy that we thought he might be with the Fox money. Nothing has really changed about the Brock Lesnar situation, but they have a program there. That's a way to have Bray, the Fiend, the full-timer with that belt and take the other one to Raw.
And despite the fact you don't have a champion on Monday Night Raw, it's arguably the best time for it to happen because we're heading towards Survivor Series next, where the titles are important, but not necessarily brand important.
Not defended, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, any other company, I would firmly expect Brock versus Rey to happen. They've built this match. It's just something that years and years of conditioning to get the rug pulled out of you just means that I can't really anticipate it. As much as I would love to see that match, I think it'd be a gross mismatch. But if anyone, other than perhaps Daniel Bryan, could work a believable David versus Goliath story of that magnitude, it would be Rey Mysterio because he's absolutely great. And one important thing to point out, if in fact he does hold significant influence, I think Raw's output is kind of mixed on that verdict, is that Paul Heyman is high as hell on Rey Mysterio. He's been pushing him as a big focal point of his new era of Raw. I'm really into the idea of that match. I think it's one workaround that can do. Basically, to quote Bray Wyatt himself, or to paraphrase him, anybody but you, Seth.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is the biggest championship in WWE right now then? Because it's been Universal Championship for years, and yet now Brock holds the WWE Championship. He's on SmackDown, which is the big show now.
So it's not the 24/7 title anymore then?
Definitely
Is
not.
that what we're saying? Definitely not. I mean, it's neither. That's really depressing, isn't it? It's
neither.
It's not. Yeah, like it's being on SmackDown in a headline spot because right now that's what WWE are focused on. You can always look at what matters the most to that company and then judge it accordingly. Roman Reigns is in the main event of SmackDown most weeks, so that paddy punches that makes the fireworks go off is the most valuable prop in WWE at the moment, more so than any of those belts. Away from the flippant answer, it's always the one over Brock Lesnar's shoulder until they show me another champion who's a bigger star than him, and we're a long way off that with The Fiend. So it's still the WWE title.
Before we quickly get to Roman Reigns, we talked about this briefly earlier on. If, for whatever reason, they keep the Universal Championship with The Fiend Bray Wyatt on SmackDown, do you change the belt, the jam belt?
Yeah, make it blue. Like
What a ridiculous thing to say. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Aesthetically,
You can't have a red belt on SmackDown.
That's what we've come to, innit?
Like,
Or would you have a sort of personalised one for Bray Wyatt's character?
Why would Bray Wyatt give one toss about the colour of the belt? You know, I'm trying to think of this from a character perspective.
Maybe
Therefore-
Rambling Rabbit redecorated it for him. The present.
Maybe. I would like to see, I think the custom one is the best workaround.
Yeah.
But what a ridiculous topic of discussion this is.
You could have
That illuminates so much to me.
his sort of victims to be on the belt. I don't know.
Oh, like an emulation of his wall of friendship.
yeah, I mean, Booker T would criticise it on backstage. Like, you might have missed all this, Cedric. It was great. When Seth Rollins burnt down the Firefly Funhouse and then WWE brought it back, on backstage afterwards, Booker T was completely unimpressed about this as a shoot. He was just like, well, it's not that good. It's just a wall and some pictures. So if Bray Wyatt brings out this sort of ramshackle belt, expect the first episode of Backstage to be like, why's he walking around with that piece of crap over his shoulder? Where's his belt?
You mentioned Roman Reigns there, sticking to what has been advertised with little to no knowledge of what's going on right now with wrestlers travelling back to America. He is scheduled to face King Corbin tonight. What is next for Roman Reigns, big picture-wise?
Big picture-wise, there's never been a better time to build him ahead of and put him in the main event of WrestleMania. He's earned so much respect since his horrendous issue last year. And it feels less like, well, for me personally, I've always been a fan of his, but judging by the fan reaction, it feels less like, we kind of have to be polite about this now. More, it feels like, we should have been way more polite to him all along. Because as terrible as a creative was, it's not like a Seth Rollins situation where he's been kind of an out-front dick about it and blamed the fans for him getting booed. He was always just an incredibly humble guy, never really allowed to show that on TV. And I think everything that's happened has brought into focus, you know what, he's an actual hero worth getting behind. And I think cynically, you want to exploit that. You really want to exploit and market that. And he should be wrestling The Fiend.
post his, like, obviously...
Not Lesnar again, for Christ's sake.
No, not Lesnar.
Reigns versus The Fiend is the one.
His comeback in March this year, and like regardless of obviously the content of the storylines with like the Daniel Bryan stuff over the summer, he's been booked quite well. And when I say well, I mean carefully. Like they've tried to put him in situations where he's going to get cheered, where he's not going to feel overbearing at any point, which has been welcome because, like, leukemia aside, we were at WrestleMania and you could still hear some boos. And I think those boos emerged from the panic that people just assumed that he was going to go straight back into that slot. And thankfully, he was only off TV for about 6 months. So like there was people that were still wary that was going to happen. That hasn't happened. That's great. And one of the byproducts of Seth's disastrous 2019 is that it's made Roman's shoulders look all the broader. Like previously, Roman was the guy that we would all watch and you couldn't help thinking, man, Cena was really good at managing this crowd because Roman can't do it. I don't know if this is just economies of scale, but it's almost like, man, Roman was really good at that because Seth can't do it.
Is it like on Family Guy when they hire that girl to stand next to Meg? And like, do you get less ugly?
That's the thing. Now that
Seth's run can look pretty good in here.
Well, that is exactly
absolutely not.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say because it's just a total poison chalice that Vince McMahon force feeds you. And again, it's all very good for me to say, oh well, Roman Reigns is popular now and he's earned respect. He should be the top babyface. If you have half an inkling to support these guys, you shouldn't want anyone anywhere near that top babyface position because it is poisoned.
It's a weird curse. Seth has been cursed.
It should be the opposite. It should be the pinnacle of your career. Yeah. But no, it's an actual curse. It's so weird.
Seth has been cursed by Roman. Roman's been cursed by Cena. Cena's been cursed by the fact that this company used to be able to book baby faces. That's the turning point. Like that's the absolute turning point. Becky Lynch is the great outlier in all this because she dared to become a top star who is of a different gender. Like so, they don't have a rule book in place for how this goes for her yet. So she gets to be the first. And like, God help the person that has to replace her when they're like look at Charlotte. Look how the Roman Reigns thing was extending to Charlotte. Despite the fact that, objectively speaking, she's the best worker in the division. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes next. But like, push Roman Reigns isn't that radical an idea, is
like
it?
You say,
push Roman Reigns.
We were all concerned, well, not all concerned, but there was rumblings around WrestleMania. We are months and months beyond that now. We are only 2 months, which is a little over 2 months, away from a potential Royal Rumble win for him, and that wouldn't feel too much, so long as they don't ruin it in the interim.
Well, 2 months.
Yes, a long time in wrestling with this year. We've certainly discovered that.
But if you look at the 2 months, I'm not being like facetious or on brand here. It was August that The Fiend arrived to incredible fanfare at SummerSlam. 2 months was the exact time frame in which he was ruined. So they have to just be careful.
Roman, I will say this. I've seen all the SmackDowns thus far since the move to Fox for work and occasional enjoyable purposes. And Roman's been the workhorse of that show. Yeah. So, like, I wish his Seth and Nakamura matches had finishes because I think they'd be talked about in, like, the Nakamura match especially. I think there'd have been glowing praise towards that. Had there just been no finish to speak of. He was great in the...
There's never a finish.
He was great in the tag match that built to the Crown Jewel match that he was then great in. So he's actually in, like, a rich vein of form. And people do remember that. It's one thing if, like, people saying, oh, they're pushing Roman Reigns too much. But how frustrating was it when you could tell the good matches were happening, but people were blinded by their hatred towards him? Now...
It's like you with AEW.
Both those things seem to be coming together. There's still no babyface billionaires. Both those things seem to be coming together with Roman Reigns.
Vince is just pissed off on a plane. Anyway.
Another match scheduled for tonight is a tag team championship match. The Revival to defend against the New Day. Could we see the New Day become tag team champions?
The Revival are on that bloody plane. They're one of the ones that got left behind. Come on, that match isn't happening.
Yeah, I mean, of all the things on this show that we could discuss.
But when this match eventually happens, let's say.
No, Kofi's getting pinned.
It's going for an update. I can't be happy about this. I generally can't. I get the guilt of there are people stranded there.
Partner panic. Kofi's getting pinned because Kofi's going to keep getting pinned until this goes somewhere. I don't propose that. I would love to think that this rage builds to Brock. I would love that that's the, like... He takes his anger out on the right person.
All right, Wilborn.
Yeah, that's
swap seats, have you?
That's so optimistic that would be like that'd be like me predicting that he's going to win the title at WrestleMania. It's just not going to go that way. I don't think he's going to snap on Big E because I don't think they're going to break the New Day up or anything like that. But like as we've discussed before, when a babyface tends to snap now, it involves a weapon and they're more over than they were before. If you think about like Charlotte decking Ronda with the cane, if you think about the entire origin story of the man. Like now, that's how WWE suddenly gets somebody over. They're actually allowed to have a bit of backbone for once in a while. So who and when Kofi snaps on doesn't really matter. It's going to be with a kendo stick. People are going to go wild. And there's going to be some cathartic release that finally he's actually reacted to this quite embarrassing, deflating defeat.
Yeah, they need to hopefully have something long-term for Kofi now to salvage what is spiralling out of control.
I just want to say, if it is a story, and I appreciate that's a lot of optimism, it's not a salvage job. Do you know what I mean? If this goes somewhere, we don't have to call it a salvage. We can call it a little bit of storytelling.
I'm not convinced by any of this. And it's, again, I would love to be proven wrong.
The pancake crushing was really cool, but I worry that was just him acting himself, trying to make something count. I got the power of positivity, guys, as like the pancakes crumble, dust in his fists. Like, I hope he was told to do that, and he wasn't just doing it because he was desperate to keep himself over.
The nature of his losses are, if they are running with this story, like a little bit too on the nose for me. And there's too much dissonance between how well protected he was. Because on paper, that was a great reign, but he was a paper champion. That is the exact problem. I just think there's too much of a dissonance between how protected he was as champion to how unprotected he's been in these recent sort of losses, that it's asking way too much of this disenfranchised audience to pick up this story beat, if it is a story, to an extent that makes me think it will not work if it is in fact a long-term thing.
We are also getting Nikki Cross, Carmella, and Dana Brooke.
We are getting this.
Bayley,
Yeah.
Mandy Rose, and Sonya Deville.
I mean, he
tonight.
might rewrite the script at the last minute or might not.
Aside from potentially going half an hour, considering the lack of talent potentially on this show, how do you see this one going?
What are the teams again?
Nikki Cross, Carmella, Dana Brooke taking on Bayley, Mandy Rose, and Sonya Deville.
I
I love the new heel Bayley, by the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely adore it.
I like the new heel Bayley. Yes, I agree. Presumably, she's going to eat the pin against whoever, because that's how these things work. Even though I don't want them to.
I mean, I think she pins Dana Brooke. I think they're going to be more protective of Bayley at this point.
Sorry, just to interject. If it was the usual Survivor Series build, wherein it's a Raw champion versus a SmackDown champion, I'd be well inclined to agree with you. It'd be a nice way to strengthen Bayley by giving her a scalp. That doesn't mean much in like its singular context, but it kind of just gets the heat back on Bayley. But the whole NXT inclusion has got me absolutely boxed. Got no idea how this is going to
The triple threat
materialize.
is a thriller if it happens, mind. Becky, Bayley, and Shayna Baszler is unreal. And like obviously that, especially with Bayley as a heel now, she doesn't have to just be this like sort of...
She would get I was going to swear there.
Yeah,
she would get kicked in.
She would get murked in that match,
Yes.
wouldn't she? She'd be the patsy for that match. For all that, like, I think like there's plenty of very, very talented wrestlers here. I thought this last week. At the moment on SmackDown, I think they've really let the side down with the fact that they've loaded the roster up full of wrestlers, but there's that very obvious turn-taking booking that I hate in women's divisions, where it's like Nikki Cross is the babyface at the moment, so all the profile goes on Nikki Cross. Sonya Deville, I'm sounding like Andy Murray here. Sonya Deville on Twitter cut one of the promos of the year in this women's division. She incinerated a lot of them and got herself over. Her and Mandy Rose got themselves across as this like relevant current force with lots to say and more that they want to do. And then she was a goon on SmackDown because Nikki Cross is the current pushed project. And they're not booking this. They're not using the talent at their disposal to make it feel like a division that's alive. Like
If you compare this to what they're doing on NXT at the moment,
Exactly.
it is night and day.
there it is. The perfect comparison is just on another channel. And I feel a bit disappointed by that. So if it's not Bayley pinning Dana Brooke because it's easy, it probably is Nikki Cross going
I'd go
over
for NXT.
because she's the project.
It strikes me that you look at those two teams, you look for the weak link in there, and I think
Dana
that would
Brooke.
make sense. It would be Dana Brooke. So yeah. Either way, tonight's
Let's be real.
TV show will be fascinating for one of a number of reasons.
Can't wait.
Let us know your thoughts ahead of SmackDown tonight in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. Watch there. Follow all three of us. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
Follow Michael Sidgwick at
Sidgwick, no update. I'm obsessed with this.
You can follow me at Adam Wilborn. As I said, follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. Enjoy SmackDown tonight. My thanks to Michael Sidgwick and to Michael Hamflett. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.